everybody, and welcome to the second and final public meeting on the Open Space and Recreation Plan. I think that the first thing we'll do is we will go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Sue Fink. I'm the Acting Community Development Director for the City of Lawrence. We have a contract with Groundwork Lawrence to help us write this plan. They've been doing a lot of outreach, surveying, and all sorts of mapping that they're going to share with us. And let's just pass this around. You can all introduce yourselves.
Brad Busher, Groundwork Lawrence.
Nicole Wall, Groundwork Lawrence. Rose Gonzalez, Groundwork Lawrence.
Kevin Blanchett, Groundwork Lawrence.
Maria de la Cruz, District 8, Senator Italian, and what else? Ex-teacher.
Keith Wanaka, Tower Hill Neighborhood Association.
Katie Jowan, Mount Vernon Neighborhood Association.
Brenda Marazzi, South Lawrence West Neighborhood Association.
Thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn the mic over to Brad so he can give just an introduction to the plan.
Sure. Thanks for coming out, everyone. The plan is a requirement of the state. In order to be eligible for grants to improve open spaces in Lawrence, such as the Common, playgrounds, that type of thing, you need to have a plan. Which is a good thing because it gets everybody around the table and organizes the city's goals and priorities. So the big takeaway for this plan is really looking at our goals and our action map, which Sue will discuss at the end of this presentation. But in the meantime, we're going to sort of describe to you how we got there. So I will talk about the survey that we conducted. Rose will discuss all the outreach that we did and some of the key points, and Kevin will discuss a quantitative GIS mapping process that we did. We wanted to mix in qualitative as well as quantitative approaches. Maria, do you need a presentation? You do have one? All right, great. Cool. So with that, I'll jump into the survey findings. So the first finding that I'm going to highlight is park usage, and no real surprise, the respondents are visiting the big parks. Caponion Common, the Boathouse, South Common, Riverfront State Park, Lawrence Heritage. Visit parks daily or weekly. 40% of respondents. Hi. Say that they visit the parks daily or weekly. Most respondents say that they travel to the parks by car, 57%, and 38% say that they either walk or bike. One of the things that I found interesting is the significance of the state park assets, the DCR assets. So that's the Boathouse, Riverfront State Park, and Lawrence Heritage State Park. All of those are that they use those regularly. Next page. So we wanted to figure out how satisfied people are with the parks. And it turns out that most people are either satisfied or slightly less than satisfied. And it looks that it varies by age groups. So those with toddlers or elementary school age kids are more satisfied, and then as you get older, so high school, middle school, adults, that level of satisfaction declines. And one significant finding also is that people generally don't feel satisfied with the facilities provided for those with handicaps or disabilities. Next page. We wanted to determine what people are doing in the parks. And I found this to be really interesting because the majority of the people who responded, they're doing free, non-organized activities such as playgrounds, walking, biking, all very common activities. And when you get into the organized rec, that's down towards the bottom. Another surprising finding is there's a really strong interest in community events. It runs the gamuts from exercise classes to the senior center to crafts to arts. People really want community events and programming. We wanted to ask what type of actions would residents support to be included within this plan. And there was broad support for all of the actions proposed in the survey, such as maintaining existing parks, improving accessibility for those with disabilities, adding new amenities, off-street walking paths, and additional community garden opportunities. So very strong support. Most people felt that it was either very important or important. So drilling down a little bit further to really concrete priorities, in general, there was a strong desire for security and cleanliness within the parks. That's really no surprise. I think that was top in the last plan and was probably number one in the previous plan too. Walking paths and play opportunities are significant priorities for the respondents of this survey. So it's 63.5% felt that it was a priority. So that's pretty significant. The survey had an open-ended question, and that question asked, what amenities or sports activities would you add to the Lawrence Park system? And so we did a word analysis to determine what words were referenced the most. And there's this word doodle that Nicole created as well. But you can see the words that pop the most: fields, parks, active, walking, art, soccer. So fields, we hear a lot about soccer fields and maintaining fields. And then also one of the things that the word analysis didn't pick up was this concept of programming, community events, and fitness. The majority of the respondents to the survey, I didn't include this data because I didn't want the presentation to be too long, but the majority of the respondents have lived in Lawrence for greater than 10 years. The majority of the respondents had a household size of between 4 and 5 individuals, and it really impressed by the geographic distribution, the neighborhood distribution of survey respondents as well. So it really felt like we got a good cross-section of the city. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Rose to talk about the outreach.
Okay. So, as you know, we did the surveys, but we also did a lot of one-on-one interviews. I attended as many meetings as I could to get feedback from folks. So trying to summarize kind of what the sense was across the city from all those, from one-on-one stakeholder meetings to, neighborhood association meetings and, listening to the survey respondents too. And there were 3 really big things that came up, and the first one you're seeing here is maintenance was a resounding theme. So, everything from how do we keep up with the existing parks before we build more or build more amenities to certainly litter and trash was a resounding theme with everyone. There was some sense like, are people just not maintaining the spaces, the users, and or are there not enough receptacles? Some parks have more than others. Do we need more trash cans? What does that mean in terms of recycling? How are we managing waste in general? So there was a little bit of all of that. And then another big thing was repair needs. And this went everywhere from what you'll see here, like the basketball nets being ripped, to things that might be more specialized needs, right? If you have a turf or a field, that might be a little more specialized to repair than, a basketball net. So really looking at maintenance needs all across the board, but from the play equipment. And then also the desire that people had, community members had to repair existing. So we'll get into, there's 3 main things about maintenance, but then increased desire for more amenities, but that a lot of the existing amenities too need a lot more maintenance. So you'll see there drainage issues, benches, dugouts, a lot of needs around the soccer fields, either overuse or drainage issues. And so looking at, again, there were three big things that we felt like we could break everything into, and amenities was the second. So maintenance being the first and amenities the second. So residents speaking a lot about either amenities not meeting the needs because they either needed the repair and or the need for additional amenities. So like West Street was a big thing. There's a lot of leagues that use it, and it's not really an official soccer field, but it's being used as a soccer field, and it's being shared with a baseball diamond that's on the space. So those are inconsistent. The users are, it doesn't help to have a baseball diamond on a soccer field, right? So in terms of the demand for users, that was a big thing we heard. Hi. We also heard a lot about a need for a dog park. So from Andover Street to Tower Hill to Cronin Park in the Arlington neighborhood, so all across the city. And with that was a couple issues, right? That the dog parks. Yeah. And with that was a couple issues, that either people are bringing their dogs to these spaces, they might be inconsistent with the space use, right? So if it's a playground and maybe not picking up after their dogs. What was that?
Dogwood Park, does that still exist?
Dogwood. I don't know that name. I don't know if it was turned into something else.
Under the 495 bridge and goes towards the ocean. Runs before, from the 495 bridge.
Oh, okay. Okay.
To the Marsden Street.
Yeah. That's still there, but I think it's a basketball
That used to be a
court.
big
Dog park?
People walking dogs.
Okay.
That was the only official dog
All right.
park I knew in the city.
Well, and we don't have any official one, right? And so people are either using spaces as dog parks and or asking for spaces to be dog parks. So the other thing was a strong desire from the South Florence East leagues to have concession stand. And with that, we also heard from other leagues, you know, we want to have benches so families have a place to sit when they come to games. We want to have bathrooms. We want to have lights so we can have evening games. So a lot of requests from a lot of the different leagues in terms of additional amenities that aren't pre-existing on those sites right now. And then we heard, again, desire for community gardens, more growing spaces. Did you have a question? You heard that? Okay.
Oh, yeah, there were some.
We do, yes. We actually were bringing 2 more online for this spring, but just that they're still, people are asking for them in other areas too, so. And then the last thing in terms of, you know, main themes was safety as an issue. And we heard a lot about the needles, which we know with the opioid crisis right now, there are a lot of needles in our parks right now. And so that was a concern for families that either use those spaces or are not continuing to use the spaces. Needles. Yes, in the parks right now. The homeless encampments, which, you know, are tied together to some extent with the needles. And then in terms of safety sight lines, so there were a few parks where people said, you know, you can't, there's overgrown vegetation, so we can't see through the fences, or we don't feel safe playing in certain areas of those park spaces because there isn't a clear sight line, either from the sidewalk in or, you know, you're playing on one side out. And then again, lights, which we heard on the fields, but in other spaces too, you know, lights in all the parks. So we do have some great lighting right here on the Common, but we don't have that same kind of lighting on all our park spaces, so that was definitely a desire. Oh, sorry. She seemed like she might be interested. I wasn't sure. So, I don't know if there's any questions. I mean, obviously we heard a lot of things, so we were just trying to summarize the main themes. Okay.
Actually, I do.
Oh, yep.
Just taking the survey, you know, maybe I don't want to jump the gun, and you're going to cover this.
Yep.
But I guess, taking the survey into consideration, what is the city size priority? Has anything been, this is the plan, obviously, to prioritize, see what's what. But as a city side, does the city have feel as a priority?
So Brad and Rose just went over the qualitative data, and as Brad mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there's also quantitative data that we added into this as well to diversify our findings and help us get a better point of view on where we should be working with our open space. So this first page, the OSRP GIS analysis, is a graphic representation of the mapping process that we used. We have 6 different maps that we overlaid on top of each other. And through there, we found the best places for us to be working. So the 6 maps that we used were open space priorities areas, which for this map we highlighted the rail trail corridor, the West Street Park, the O'Connell South Common, and O'Neill Park. We also used social and environmental justice mapping, which shows low-income areas, minority areas, and also areas with who don't speak English or limited English speaking. There's also a map for population by age, so we mapped out the population under 18 years old and above 65 years old. We have recreational accessibility, and historic and conservation, and development priority areas. And then if you look at the map, through combining all these maps together, we found that there are some areas of interest that we could be focusing in. So if you look on their map, we have the Water Street right around the Boys and Girls Club. That area, it would be, according to the maps and the quantitative data, that's a good place for us to be working in. The rail trail corridor, that area is also an area that had been highlighted through this analysis. The up here in between Lawrence Street and Jackson Street, that whole area was also another area that we could be focusing on, right around the South Common and the South Common neighborhood, and by the corner of Broadway and Andover Street. Those are the areas that the quantitative data highlighted on where we could be working on. This quantitative data is slightly limited. If you look at the next page, it talks about a tier 2 analysis, and with that we will be adding the conditions of the parks. So as we all know, like, some parks are in better condition than others, and we want to represent that in our mapping. So what we'll be going out to the parks and assessing their conditions that they're in and adding that into the mapping so that we can get a better representation and have a better idea of where we need to be focusing our efforts in open space priority.
So you mentioned Broadway and Andover. What is the park there?
That's part of the conclusion of this mapping process, is that area in south, between south of Andover Street, west of Broadway, south of the kind of the Weatherby School area. Well, the Weatherby's not, it's on the inside of the tracks. That area is lacking in really a park, and there's a higher density of.
There is a park on Andover Street, Donovan Park.
Donovan Park.
It's
Yeah.
been like,
Anything with.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a sad part.
Well,
Sad
yes,
part.
at one point, we
Doesn't have
had
to be.
spoke to someone at Glenwood, Florence, that we wanted to, and this was like in 2009, 10, we wanted to have the park, because a lot of, people in the neighborhood, and we were told at the time, because we're so close to Andover, we couldn't get anything done with the park. We're talking 2009, 2010, and then someone adopted the park and cleaned it, and no one's doing anything with it now. But there's land behind it that the community gardens, we had talked about that also, and
Yeah.
that we couldn't.
That brings up a good point. Is there any part of the city that is not classified eligible for a CDBG grant for parks? Any area of the city, or is the whole entire city eligible?
Well, because the parks are available to all residents, all the census tracts would be eligible.
Because it was true, right? Before, it used to be like, especially with CDBG, it's only eligible for certain parts of the city. And I know every grant's different depending on. Okay, well, it's good to know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm talking about the park that runs from South Lawrence along the river, the Merrimack River. I know that's not on the map here. Is that?
Oh, it's definitely
Yeah,
included
riverside.
with, yeah, the riverfront.
Yeah,
We'll
Riverfront Park. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely part of our analysis.
Yeah.
It's in the open space data layer for the mapping, and it was included in the survey as well. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
the DCR parks get a lot of visitation, or at least the respondents say that they visit these parks.
Yeah, I guess it's heavily visited because there's been a lot of trash picked up there in the last couple of weeks, as you probably know.
Yeah.
I was involved in a trash pickup with some Andover people. I don't know, it was the last weekend or the weekend before.
Yeah.
And but I guess according to residents that live over there, it's heavily used in the summertime. Hundreds of people go in there for picnics and dump trash all over the place, which is a big concern for the neighbors over there. But
But if I could, don't you feel that for the open space plan, really any of the DCR parks really are not affecting this? Because they take care of their own parks. And I think that's the issue why people in the city go to them more, is because they are well maintained, they are a little well lit, better than the city parks. I mean, that's
well,
a big part of it. I mean,
the park along the South Lawrence, the river in South Lawrence is not maintained. The state doesn't have enough staff to keep it going. I know we emptied a trash, one of the big 60-gallon drums. It was full to the top and flowing over and trash everywhere. So it's I don't think they have the staff to maintain those parks. But that place was a total disaster, a mess.
Unfortunately, we can't make any
Yeah.
improvements to the state park because the city doesn't own those parks. But we need to consider those in our planning purposes because they are in proximity to neighbors, so that's.
Yeah, well, they said it's heavily used. Correct, yeah. And I don't know. Well, that was just a point of information I was asking.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the goals of the open space and recreation plan. So these are in no particular order, but we would like to meet the recreational needs of all residents by providing a diverse range of park amenities that appeal to all ages, genders, and abilities. 2, we'd like to increase resident awareness about the natural, cultural, recreational, and historic resources provided by Lawrence's park system. 3, provide residents with alternative transportation options through the establishment of an interconnected system of rail trails, riverwalks, and greenways. 4 is preserving and maintaining Lawrence's historic resources and its rich cultural heritage. 5, continue to provide opportunities for urban agriculture as a source of local fresh food for residents. And finally, 6 is meet the evolving needs of residents by maintaining and renovating existing parks and open spaces. So this time our goals are a little bit different than they were in the last plan. The last plan was more heavily geared towards maintenance and cleanup and the creation of parks. This is sort of getting the people to use the parks, making other recreational opportunities available for them. We're dealing with health as one of the goals. We're trying to make Lawrence a healthy community, so having the community gardens allows for the fresh food to be grown for families. And I really like the first goal because it mentions all ages, genders, and abilities. And one of the things that I've found lacking in the city is play opportunities for those with disabilities. So my goal is when we do the playground over at South Common is to include some equipment that can be used by children and adults with disabilities, because they deserve to have the same opportunities for recreation and play as any of us do.
Do any of those amenities exist in any other city park?
Not in Lawrence, no.
Okay, that's a question.
And I did have a meeting with a sales rep from a play equipment company, and it's interesting that they have certain equipment that's more geared towards people on the autistic spectrum because of some of the spatial needs that they had, the sensitivity. There's some really interesting pieces, and that's something that I would be very much interested in putting into one of our parks.
That's a good idea.
Okay, then we have our action map. And this is really where the city's priorities are for where we want to put our emphasis in the next plan. Number one is the O'Connell South Common, which right now we do have a park grant. We're going to be coming to the South Common Neighborhood Association meeting on the 23rd to present some designs, to get some feedback. We'll get 100% plans by the end of June, and we'll go out to bid for Phase 1 sometime this summer. So Florence,
Is there any tree planting going to be occur there or anything? In South Lawrence?
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
we always plant trees when we do a park. We're big on trees.
The trees are actually in the nursery, and Kevin is going to start planting them with the crew next week.
Yeah.
Excellent. Because you always need shade when you're at a park. Our next item is the South Florence East concession stand. That's something that the mayor has put on his capital improvement plan for the upcoming fiscal year. You'll see that when the budget comes out on Thursday. Howard Playstead is another park that's going to be on the mayor's capital improvement plan, and there's an opportunity perhaps for a grant from another organization that's going to help us purchase play equipment for that park, which is always great. The Lawrence Rail Trail and West Street Park, right now we do have some equipment on a boat from Germany to replace the very shabby equipment, play equipment at Burgoyne Square Park, also known as West Street Park. And we're going to be going out to bid for the installation of that. The rail trail is a project near and dear to the planning department's hearts in our office. And we're looking to connect from Methuen down to the Merrimack.
Merrimack Street.
Down to Merrimack Street. I'm not involved in that park, so that project, so I don't have a lot of answers about that, but I know Brad's.
Well, and that connects to the rail trail that's being developed in Methuen. So you could
Which connects to
realistically
Salem, which
go-
connects to Wyndham.
Go from Merrimack Street all the way up to downtown Methuen, to Nevins Farm, Rockingham Mall, all in this rail trail. So it's kind of cool.
Hayden Schofield is a very well-used park that's in need of a little attention. O'Neill Park, another park that gets lots of use. We had a great meeting today with some interested stakeholders in that park. We got a lot of good feedback. We've got some neat ideas that we're going to be pursuing. Pemberton Park is the park alongside the river, next to the municipal parking lot and the Casey Bridge. That, again, is owned by DCR, but the city owns the parking lot there, so there's a good option for a partnership there.
So what's planned for that park?
We don't have specific plans at this point, but that's part of our goals over the next 7 years is to really reinvigorate that park. It's a beautiful park right along the river, and it just doesn't get used enough, in my opinion.
This was inserted largely because when the city did the urban renewal plan process, Pemberton was highlighted as one of the park's opportunities in downtown in the urban renewal area that would benefit from some additional programming to bring people down there to the waterfront.
It's sort of a hidden park. Not a lot of people use it because it's sort of tucked away. People know there's a parking lot there, but I don't know how many people actually look beyond the parking lot and see that there's actually a park.
Well, the issue with the homelessness right now too is a lot of debris, yeah, just like behind family services, there's encampments and there's a big issue.
It goes hand in hand. If the park's abandoned, nobody's using it, then
Then it attracts bad
it
activity.
it's backfilled with bad activity.
And luckily,
Ramp down there, too.
there is, yes, and I do see people fishing there. The mayor did put some funding in the city budget this current fiscal year, as well as going forward, for a homelessness and issues coordinator. He's only been on board a little over a month now. He's really diving headfirst into this and meeting with all sorts of partners and stakeholders, because we need to address the needs of those homeless individuals, and it's really not a humane situation for them to be living out on the street, and that's something that we really need to focus on.
Can I just add a question about Pemberton Park?
Sure.
That was originally like, the plan too was always like to move, they always talked about putting the carnivals down there. Carnival was held down there, the carnivals don't like to be down there, because they say it's away from everything. And it is a shame, because you're right, there's plenty of parking. Cars fly by with a daycare there and family services, is where they're a lot, because LNAP meets there a lot. And they just zip, boom, in and out. And but it's great, I mean, right now you have a movie crew down there. So it is an underutilized park. But I'm intrigued with the next one, so let's go on.
I knew, Keith, that you would be intrigued with the next one. And Tower Hill has a special place in my heart, too. So Tower Hill Reservoir is another area that it's a beautiful, beautiful spot in the city. I spent lots of time up there in my younger days. And again, it's a space that's underutilized and really needs to be activated, and people to get up there and appreciate and see the beauty that you can see from up there.
Well, I live right next to the park.
Yes, you do.
And I'm there about every day, and in the cemetery. I mean, it's probably the biggest green space area in the city. There's probably well over 100 acres if you include all of the Bellevue Cemetery. And so forth.
And it's a beautiful
And
space up there.
It's used very extensively, the Reservoir Park.
I walked many a mile around that.
2.5 times a mile.
Yep. Slid down the hill in the summer on a piece of cardboard, on my sled in the winter.
I was in the old Bellevue Cemetery tonight, and that's about 37 acres. That's a beautiful place to walk, you know. The city on the website welcomes artists and photographers to use the place. They don't welcome the general public, it seems. But, I was talking about the possibility of walking in the cemeteries. They are nice areas to walk in. And the old Bellevue Cemetery, you know, there's a lot of historical grave sites there, a very interesting park. And there's a lot of nice trees of different sorts in there, too. And it could be a walking space for a lot of adults. I mean, I'm sort of selfish. I have it to myself right now, and it's beautiful, you know. But yeah, but it's a beautiful place to walk in. And I mean, you know, many of the old mayors of Lawrence are buried there, and church founders and so forth. It's loaded with historical significance. Of course, it's attached to the it's attached to the rail trail, you know, and it's I would hope there'd be a marking on the rail trail pointing to the Bellevue Cemetery, bringing up some of the historical aspects of the Bellevue Cemetery could be hitched together. But I was just going to say, I just noticed there was an article in the Tribune about is it the Spring Hill or the Spring Cemetery in Andover. There was this debate about dog poo in the cemetery. You know, it's not an issue in our cemetery at this point, but I noticed in Andover they said they welcome people. It's a beautiful place to walk and a beautiful cemetery. But I mean, I I see it as a park. Right now, I see it as kind of my personal park. There's nobody in there, but there are stragglers at times, and people come up sometimes and walk their dogs in there or let them go. But anyway, but the reservoir area is heavily used. Yeah, there's a little too much trash thrown around. That's one thing.
And as Rose has pointed out during the stakeholder meetings and the surveys, that was a big issue all around.
Yeah,
It's trash.
a huge issue, and that's terrible.
The trash, you can have 100, you can have 100 recyclables, containers and 100 trash barrels, and it's about education too. People still throw their garbage because they're ignorant. And it all comes down to, for what I see with these plans, it's great to have all the green space. It's phenomenal, I mean, but how is it going to be maintained after? What's the plan? Because the DPW department doesn't have the manpower, like we were saying about DCR. They don't have the power to maintain it. So, you know, throw millions of dollars at the parks, which is great, but what's the long-term plan? You know, is that being in the plan? I mean, I know we've talked about maintenance, so I guess my question is, what's next? Like from the survey on.
Before you answer that, I'll tack on to that question. Is there any consideration of, I think we have, 35 parks or something in like less than 7 square miles, especially with the data showing that some parks aren't visited at all, to eliminate some of those, to free up DPW resources or anything? Or maybe make them community gardens instead of...
Well, we certainly don't want to give up any open space. I mean, some people don't have any yards at all, and the parks function as their yards. So I think that's important that we keep all the open space that we have. The city, the Mayor's Health Task Force has received a grant called Mass in Motion. And one of the priorities that we're working on, we have to have a plan, and we're doing some work on, is an adopted park system. So we're working with the DPW director to come up with a system that's going to work, what the expectations will be of people who adopt the park. There'll be an ordinance. So there is some work going on to do some assistance. I think that was a little more, for lack of a better word, loosey-goosey. This is going to be a more structured system. There's going to be like specific expectations placed on people. And it's not just about, plant some flowers and then forget about it. It's going to be sort of an ongoing responsibility, and maybe even getting some bigger companies to adopt a park, not just, a neighborhood or a small business. So I think it's important to bring the larger community into this as well.
When Roger did it, it was a lot of the smaller, the rotaries.
More of the squares and triangles, right.
And that was, their job was just to cut it, plant flowers, beautify it to the nice weather. But it'd be nice to get the big parks.
Yeah, I think it was more of a beautification
Right.
than like a true adopt-a park.
Yeah, just take a little.
And it was
pressure off the
lovely.
DPW.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
nice to see the parks, the little squares decorated and that, but I think we're looking for something a little broader.
Right.
Yes, Maria?